all here. Calling this meeting of the Santa Fe Board of Education to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, the salute to the New Mexico flag, and the acknowledgement of tribal land, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and is a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el simbología de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together. Thank you. Now we need an approval of the agenda, and tonight we will be doing the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag and acknowledgement of tribal land twice. So this is the approval of the agenda for the special meeting only. Can I have a motion?
Sorry. Go ahead. I recommend that we approve the agenda.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to our action item, consideration for approval of Resolution 2018-2019-12, awarding the Series 2019 Educational Technology Notes to purchaser Robert W. Baird and Company, Incorporated. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. The bond sale tonight represents the first for the 5-year, $55 million authorization approved by voters in 2019. This Series 2019 $11 million note sale will be conducted through a negotiated sale with our underwriters, R.W. Baird, on June 17th. Proceeds of the sale will support the 5th-year implementation of the district's digital learning plan, and our Chief Financial Officer, Herman Martinez, will make the introductions and opening remarks.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, members of the board, and community. Today we did have a few phone calls with Eric and his team, the bond counsel, and as well with R.W. Baird regards to the sale. I'll turn the time to him as he has more of the logistics as far as how that transaction occurred. But it seems like we're in a better, I think, sale position in this time of the year as opposed to other times that are available for a sale. So I'll turn it over to Eric, and he can explain, I think, a little better as far as how it was structured.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. As Herman mentioned, we were in the market not only with the education technology notes this morning, which is you'll be approving tonight, but also the $15 million of general obligation bonds. They were sold together at favorable interest rates. The true interest cost on the education technology note was 1.56%. This compares to last year's sale of 1.94%, and the general obligation bonds, the true interest cost on that was 2.10% compared to last year's of 2.82%. And this is due primarily to the strong market conditions that we have seen over the last 8 months. We've seen a fairly significant decline in interest rates. I will say that the issuance or the sale of both the education technology notes will continue to maintain its historical tax rate of $1.50, and the GO bonds will continue to maintain that rate of $4.30. The district did maintain its AA rating by Standard & Poor's, and that was the only rating that the district had. And again, as mentioned, R.W. Baird was the underwriter on the bonds, and with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Board Member Carrillo.
Just for procedural purposes, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair, just really quick.
Yes, Secretary.
Is
Garcia.
the percentage rate locked in there for the payout of the bonds?
That is correct. The rate is locked. Now, the general obligation bonds do come with an 8-year call provision. So in the event that interest rates are lower in the future, that does give the district the ability to call those bonds if needed. The education technology notes, because they are very short, only 3 years, they do not have an optional call provision.
And would you mind saying a few words about the procedure of sale? Because this always fascinates me, and I just like to hear a little bit about how it goes and how it went.
Sure, absolutely. So both the bonds were sold at a negotiated sale. So on Friday afternoon, we had with Erman and his staff and us and the underwriter, R.W. Baird, we're on a conference call to discuss the market conditions. Like I mentioned, we've seen very favorable market conditions because of where interest rates have been over the last few months. And then this morning, we went into the market at 8:30 this morning. We had an hour-and-a-half order period. One of the benefits of where we are in the interest rate market is that as the district, you get a very low interest rate. The drawback is that investors don't like these rates because they like higher rates. So we saw about half of the transaction sold at the end of the order period. R.W. Baird, they went back to investors, to try to get a little bit more interest. We received about 2 million more in orders during the secondary period. However, after the end of the period, there was still about 8 million of unsold balances. R.W. Baird took those into their book. That is their risk. And as far as the district is concerned, those bonds are sold and those interest rates are locked in through the term of the bonds, which for the GEO bonds is 2020 to 2031, and for the ETNs 2020 to 2022.
Okay, so what you just described was for both. I was wondering if that was just the ETN or if that was also the GEO bond.
That is for both.
Okay, any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The resolution has been approved. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming up. Safe drive home.
Thank you.
Now, we will adjourn this meeting and reconvene in about 4 minutes. Okay, calling another meeting to order of the Santa Fe Board of Education. This is our regular meeting, beginning at 4:15 p.m. for executive session. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, the salute to the New Mexico flag, and the acknowledgement of tribal land.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo Zia de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas.
We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together. Okay, thank you. We are on to approval of the agenda. Anyone have any requested changes, or can I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, move for approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. We now are on to item 2 on the agenda, moving into executive session. Secretary Garcia.
Madam President, I'd like to actually move the Board of Education to executive session where we will discuss item A, limited personal matters, item B, collective bargaining, item C, threatened or pending litigation according to New Mexico statutes annotated.
And I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are in executive session. All right, the Santa Fe Board of Education is coming back from executive session. Secretary Garcia.
Madam President, I'd like to take us out of item 2 on the agenda, which is executive session. Item A, limited personnel matters, superintendent's contract. Item B, collective bargaining. Number 1 is Santa Fe Federation of School Employees Collective Bargaining. Number 2, National Education Association, Santa Fe Collective Bargaining. Item C is threatened or pending litigation. Item 1 is NMPSIA update, and where no action was taken.
And that's a motion to come out?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the introduction of the interpreter.
Good evening, Board President Noble, Superintendent Garcia, board members, community members, and staff. My name is Germán Martinez. I'll be serving as the interpreter for tonight. If anybody would like services of interpretation for this meeting, I will provide those in the back of the room. Buenas tardes, Presidente Noble, Superintendente, Doctora García, miembros de la Junta Escolar. Mi nombre es Germán Martínez, serviré como traductor para esta junta. Si alguien ocupa o solicita esos servicios, estaré al lado atrás de la sala. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the union update. Ms. Mayer. My apologies. Thank you, Vice President Price. Do we have anyone, I'm sorry, Grace. Do we have anyone signed up for public forum? Dr. Ryan.
Board President Noble, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, there are no people signed up for public forum.
Thank you very much. So now, without further ado, the union update.
Well, if you want a copy. I didn't know if you got a copy. We're going off the same list. Good evening. I'm Grace Mayer, NEA Santa Fe president and art teacher at Milagro Middle School. I'm not sure where Mr. Holguin is, but maybe he wants to present as well. I don't know if he's scheduled. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about this evening. Primarily is our collective bargaining changes, which you received a copy of a summary. But in a broader context, I wanted to discuss our relationship, or NEA Santa Fe's relationship with the school district, and how I believe it's improved dramatically under along with Linda Sink, but also under the guidance of our superintendent, and how when our superintendent first came in, we were at a real crossroads with the district as a union. We didn't have a lot of common ground, we felt, and there was a lot of negative, I think, interactions with the school board directly in public, And as you know, a lot of contentious interactions with me and the former superintendent. When Veronica Garcia came in, she gave me assurances that she would work at the union and agree to follow our collective bargaining agreement, and worked on three major things that we sort of discussed at length. One was the reduction of testing in schools for students so that teachers felt that they were really making an impact in their instruction and felt they had some professional leadership within their classrooms. She also talked about assuring that teachers and other employees felt welcome in the district and that they were received in all the departments and their issues were dealt with so that we didn't have, so that the management of the district and the systems really supported them in their classrooms and in their jobs. She also reassured us that we would be a priority in terms of salaries and funding. So as I discuss our accomplishments this year and last year, I want us to kind of also reflect on how I believe that the superintendent is directly instrumental in making those things happen. And I'll just share a couple of stories about how she personally engages with me that I appreciate. I have her phone number, for one, which is always good. Where in the past, I wasn't able to reach out to the former superintendent to get a response if there was an emergency or a concern about a student or a situation that I felt that we needed to deal with directly. Also, a long time ago, when she returned to Santa Fe, we had a gathering at our headquarters, and I told the story of how when I worked as an EA at Santa Fe High, Lorraine was the principal then, or assistant at the time, and Veronica came up and said, and it was a contentious time. The state was considering taking over the district for all kinds of things. It was similar contentious interactions with, I think, the union because there was literally no money. There was a time where we had to sign, as an organization, as a member, we voted on a $100 raise because that was it. And some people felt really slighted by that. And I remember her coming up to Santa Fe High to talk to a vocal group of teachers and staff. And when she did, she engaged with them. She was civil. They were not so civil. But at the end, I think we all realized that she felt that we could get through this and we could manage it. And so we moved forward because that's all we could really do. But personally, she came up to me and she didn't know who I was, and I was an EA in a sped room. And she thanked me for working and selecting Santa Fe Public Schools as a place that I wanted to work. And I thought, well, that's really unbelievable. This is like the first person other than Ms. Price, who said, I value you as a person who walked in here, who's willing to do this difficult job and not get paid very much. And I shared that story at the time, a couple of years ago, and a lot of people in the audience had a similar reaction to how they remember Dr. Garcia back then and how they hoped that things would improve because we had such low morale a few years ago. And they were relieved to hear the similar sentiment that she was working for us and she wanted us to know that every day she'd wake up and she'd do her job so that we can do ours. And that's all educators want to hear. That's all employees want to hear, is that we got your back, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you can do your job well. Because we don't come into this profession thinking we're going to make money. We think that we're making a difference. So when you're not making a difference, you don't feel good about your job. So I think we're back on solid ground now about making a difference in children's lives in Santa Fe, and that has a lot to do with the superintendent and her attitudes towards supporting the relationships that she knows are valuable to get the most out of people. You can't get the most out of people if you don't treat them with dignity. And sometimes you have to also, increase their wallet. And I think we're doing that. And we're steadily doing it. We're doing it incrementally. And now I think the state is also helping us to do that incrementally as well. I know that Dr. Garcia, when she goes to surprise the employees who win the Teacher of the Month or the ESP Award of the Month, she says a similar thing to them. And she thanks them for working and choosing Santa Fe Public Schools. And I think that's a remarkable thing coming from a superintendent, because I didn't hear it a lot before. No one really came into our lives and said, not just thank you, but thank you for choosing to work here, which means something. This is my community. I don't want to work somewhere else. I want to make the best environment I can for the students there. And as an elected, NEA Santa Fe president, I want to do the best that I can for our membership in this district. I don't want them to move on. I don't want them to go somewhere else. I want them to send their kids to our schools and feel comfortable in doing that as well. And I think a lot of our employees who live in the community, send their kids to public schools, and choose to work for Santa Fe Public Schools are committed to working through that whole 20-year career here. And so I think that when I share with you some of how the district infused money into our tier tables, it was strategic in that for the last 3 years we've talked about this. How do we retain those employees who are dedicated and who have put in 10, 15, 18 years Santa Fe Public Schools? We don't want them to move. We want them to still keep commuting for Rio Rancho because they want to work in Santa Fe. I don't know why they want to do that, but hey, they've been doing it for a while. So let's try to reward their commitment to the students in Santa Fe and to their careers here at Santa Fe Public Schools. So the tier minimums were increased as per the mandate to $41,000, $50,000, and $60,000. However, the district did manage to negotiate more money to infuse so that there was step increases yearly for those teachers kind of at the lower end who weren't seeing those percentage increases from the mandated. So on average, we have a 9% increase on those tables. And that's a commitment that I believe the superintendent made when she first came, and several board members here made and continue to make, and we appreciate that. Our secretaries, EAs, and library paraprofessionals, their hourly rate is now at a minimum of $13 an hour, which is above the living wage, which we are pleased to bring forward. One of the reasons we have to tier this up is, and think about how we can get to $15 an hour, is that we don't have all the money to do the changes that we need to do to keep people engaged and trying to, fill those positions. But I'm hoping that next year we go to 14, and then the following year we go to 15. So that our goal was to do it in 3 years, from $11.80 to $15, but so that there would be no employee at Santa Fe Public Schools that would make less than $15 an hour. We have people in transportation, we have people in in some other positions in special ed, some of our EAs who do make $15 an hour, and we're proud of that, but we need to get everybody, in my view, to that place, and that would be a really celebratory year, I think. Maybe we can do it next year. I'm just putting it out there, but I have a feeling we'll have to wait that additional year. The student nutrition cook cashier position, that was raised to $13.50 an hour. Then the head of nutrition really wanted to highlight that particular position. She feels like that rate of pay would get the kind of applicant that they need to do that dual job and to serve in that role. And we're hoping that that pays off. We created a district lead secretary stipend, one in elementary and one in secondary, with the help of Carla C. DeVaca, who's the secretary at Pinon. She came into bargaining and served as a contact for us about how we can support our new employees that are secretaries to come in. That's a massive undertaking now, that position. And a lot of people walk away, one, because it doesn't pay enough for the level of what the commitment is to that position. But also, there's a lot of parts of that have to move. And to do it well, you really have to be trained well. And so we're hoping that, I know that Deputy Superintendent Sink is working on trying to have some PD developed for the beginning of the year for the secretaries with the help of the two lead secretaries that are soon to be, I think, appointed or elected to that. One thing that we talked about is professional leave, and we modified this a little bit to accommodate some requests from our employees. So we have that paid professional leave for some special circumstances that will benefit employees. Professional goals and district programs may be granted by the deputy superintendent. So this is in addition to ones that are usually signed off on by the principal. So an individual employee could present their reason or rationale for going on professional leave for a week or so to do something that they feel will benefit themselves in their career. And if the deputy superintendent agreed, that would be paid professional leave, which we are hoping satisfies some of concerns that employees have, that they felt that they weren't being allowed to sort of explore their own personal professional goals. So hopefully this will. And I think that's about it. We do have the student nutrition workers, and this again comes from the nutrition department, is going to have a train the trainer course to train staff for the cook cashier position, and there's going to be 6 stipends for them to do that work. I think that this reflects how the district has sort of grown in the last couple of years, from trying to get our, I think bringing in people to try to, try to train people. Obviously, we do have professional development on certain things, and that you can't really escape bringing in outside people for. But if we can use our own employees to train people here and how things work, I think we're always in a better position than if we have someone from the outside. And I think that's also been a conversation that I've had with the superintendent and the deputy superintendent, is that we trust our colleagues a lot more than we trust someone who's a paid person coming in a lot of the times. And we're also a little more likely to ask questions that we're afraid of asking because we know we don't know the answer, and we don't want to look like we're really in that much, like if you ask your colleague how this program works in technology, they're not going to look at you like, how do you not know that? That's so passé. That was 5 years ago, that program. And you're like, yeah, and 5 years ago I was doing this or doing that. But I think that we're always in a better position if we can use our own employees to help train new employees or those of us who need to know new skills to get by. And obviously we do. As technology expands, we're always needing new skills. So I brought those two things together because I think it's really important that the superintendent know that she's made a difference in the last few years and continues to make a difference. And that I want the board to recognize that NEA Santa Fe completely supports the work of the superintendent. And we would love to have her contract extended for as long as she would love to be here. I also want to mention that I know that the bargaining team from the district has grown along with us and in trying to get to what we need to get to in a way that is mutually kind of, I think, passionate, we should say, but also the need to get to a place where our employees think that we're working for them and that we're not working in opposition to each other. And I believe that we're there and that we'll continue to do that work. And I just want to thank Deputy Linda Sink and her team for working with us. And we have ratified these changes. And so we're just waiting for the board to approve so that we can move forward. That's it, if you want to ask any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any specific questions?
I just want to say something.
Dr. Garcia?
Thank you, Madam President. And I don't remember the EA story, but thank you for sharing that with me, Ms. Mayor. And I just want to say, you know, sometimes we rock and roll and we go round and round on some things, but no doubt to the teachers and others in your bargaining group that you represent them with integrity and passion and ferocity, and it's been a pleasure working with you as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, Ms. Mayor, and your negotiating team for working so hard with the district's negotiating team to get to where we are. Okay, moving on. Board announcements and follow-up. Any board members? Yes, Vice President Price.
I just wanted to say that I have a note that was written to me personally by the superintendent when she was superintendent the last time, and I still have that note. So.
Any other board announcements or follow-up? Okay. Moving on to superintendent's announcements and follow-up. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We have quite a few announcements and follow-up. We will be introducing all of the new employees and assignments at the August meeting, but because some of these assignments take place July 1, we're going to go ahead and introduce them so the public is aware. David Carl will be taking over as Community Engagement Officer, and Mr. Carl has been Director of Communications from the New Mexico Office of the Attorney General and a former reporter of KOAT-TV. Josh Granata is here this evening. You might want to wave, Josh. Mr. Granata is a former teacher at Atalaya Elementary School. Most recently was Assistant General Counsel for 5 years with the Office of the Attorney General, where he represented the state in the Zuni lawsuits challenge of capital outlay funding in the schools and served as counsel to the Public Education Commission. During his teaching career, Mr. Granata worked at Atalaya for 6 years as a 3rd and 4th grade teacher, testing coordinator, and literary specialist at Agua Fria, teaching students from 1st to 6th grade in a pull-out program, as well as teaching 2nd grades. He held a K-8 Level 2 teaching license. It's a rare gem to have a former teacher as our general counsel, and also proud Santa Fe High School graduate, so welcome. We're very fortunate to have as our Chief Assessment for Learning and School Improvement, Dr. Suchit Sarangar. He will be here and introduce formally. He has 30 years of experience encompassing instruction, research, evaluation, administration, and consultation from elementary to graduate school, both in Thailand and the United States. He's well sought after and has a distinguished reputation as the top guy in the state, and we're so lucky to have him. He will begin during the interim. We will formally introduce him when we reconvene in August. In new positions, Ms. Wagner will be moving from associate to deputy superintendent for operations and school support, and will continue to supervise the areas that she has, but will provide leadership to the Human Resources Department as it transforms its vision for excellence. Gabe Romero will continue to be Executive Director, Facilities and Planning, but will have a broader role in supervising and the execution of board priorities under the general services. So his role will expand some. Ms. Vanessa Romero will continue on as Associate Superintendent. This year she oversaw 11 schools, and that was quite a challenge. She is a former principal of Ramirez Thomas Elementary School, and she will be taking on a stronger role in professional development next year, and I'll explain why in a second. Erica Martinez Maestas is out of state, but we will formally introduce her also. She will be the new principal at Chaparral Elementary. She lives in the Chaparral neighborhood and has a vested interest in seeing this community thrive, and so we're excited about her. Mario Solvidres' position is a move from director to executive director of safety and security to better match his responsibilities that he has had. Linda Sink will be decreasing from 1.0 to 0.6 FTE. We're lucky to still have her as a deputy superintendent, and but this is why Ms. Romero will be taking on more duties in terms of professional development. So all the new people will be formally introduced. One is not in here. The board restored one of the positions that we had left vacant last year. Larry Chavez will be Assistant Superintendent for Athletics and Activities and School Support. We're very proud of his leadership in the area of athletics and activities, with seeing increased participation, and he will be supervising some schools next year. So the school assignments will be announced in August. Santa Fe Public Schools nominee received the NMSBA scholarship. So exciting. This will be presented formally in August by NMSBA, but you know, when we were always concerned that we haven't been picked, we were selected. And so Olivia Umana will be receiving the $1,000 scholarship, which will support her pursuit of an Associate's of Science in Nursing. So more to come on that. NMSU's Educator Rising Teacher Cadet Instructor class includes Santa Fe Public Schools teacher Anna Sorio. Anna Sorio, a language and arts teacher at Santa Fe High, will join the NMSU's Educator Rising Teacher Cadet Instructor class this summer to learn the curriculum for inspiring teachers in teaching. On the waiting list is Capitol High School teacher Jennifer Jewell. This is something that Board President Noble has been nudging us along to move in this direction. Tonight you'll be hearing about the resolution. But this program, Educators Rising, is taught as an elective in 11th and 12th grade, and we're very excited to be kicking this off. Right now, in addition to Santa Fe, there are only 4 districts that are participating: Deming, Las Cruces, Ruidoso, and Taos. So we're proud again for Santa Fe Public Schools to be an early adopter. We also are now a part of the Comcast partnership. Santa Fe Public Schools is partnering with Comcast to provide low-cost internet to families on a tight budget. This service, called Internet Essentials, includes high-speed internet for $9.95 a month, no credit check, no term contract, no installation fee. In-home Wi-Fi is included. It's going to make a big difference for our students. They also have the option to purchase a refurbished desktop or laptop for $149. And this includes all the software and Norton Security, free in-person and online digital training. parents must qualify, using free and reduced lunch program. But I want to thank Krista Libata for really pushing this. Our kids take home the Chromebook, and they can do homework, but not hook to the internet. So, and we have data and research that this digital divide has an impact on student performance. And we know that we have high poverty in our district, so this is a super great initiative. Santa Fe High School takes first, and that's right, first, in the virtual science fair. On June 7th, the National 2019 GO 16-17 Virtual Science Fair announced that Santa Fe High School was first place, and the Santa Fe High School team included Coach Derek Bushman and student Ferris Wald. So congratulations to all of them. Their whole focus was around space, science, and engineering. The RFP for community support services that you all asked about will be posted on Thursday. I also need to let you know that the district will close based on the request from the county on November the 5th. It will be an in-service day for staff. Only students will be released. And then we'll monitor our snow days to see if we need to make up a full day or whether or not we'll just add minutes. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, those employees, which are all pretty much district employees, on a 260-day contract would have worked 2 extra additional days this year. So we will have off on October the 14th and April the 10th to allow for those additional days off, because that will keep us in compliance with the 260-day contract. That concludes my updates and announcements.
Thank you very much. That digital divide thing is very, very cool and very real. Okay, on to the consent agenda. I asked the superintendent if we could have a little bit of context around item B on the consent agenda. Having added it up, we have more than, or close to $25 million in contracts over $50,000 to approve this evening. So if we could consider that separately, perhaps we also need to approve the minutes separately as... Well, no, I don't believe we do, actually. Okay, so on the consent agenda, if it's all right, can we consider everything but item B at first? Is there a motion?
Madam President, move for approval with the exception of item B.
Thank you very much.
Second it.
Okay, all those in favor of... Yep, Board Member Carrillo.
But June 10, not all 5 of us were here, right? In terms of minutes, because you brought that up, in terms of approving minutes.
Yes, but there is
Well, it's just the going in and coming out.
nothing
That's fine.
substantial
Okay.
in those minutes. Okay, we have a motion and a second for everything on the consent agenda, excepting item B, the contracts over $50,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, on item B, contracts over $50,000, and it's great to see so much moving forward for the district, and just given the size of some of these and the aggregate total, I appreciate you providing a little context. Dr. Garcia.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and the President also made a very good suggestion that we will do our best to adhere to in the future, and that is to batch the contracts that you can see all of GeoBond together, all of ETN together, the operational, so it's easier for you to look at those in disaggregated in that way. With that said, Board President Noble requested that we give you a brief overview, and I'm going to call forward our CFO, Edmond Martinez. He will be calling select staff to perhaps add a little extra color or flavor or answer questions on some of those, particularly those that are large ticket items. So we're ready for that. Mr. Martinez.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Dr. Garcia. So we typically have these contracts renewed during June. These are annual contracts, maintenance, construction related. As you know, we do have $50,000 as a threshold, and some of those do carry throughout the year. And so with that, some of the aggregate of what these contracts consist of, in regards to facilities and maintenance, about $9.5 million is going specifically towards facilities and maintenance. And some of those being specifically for just regular contracts in terms of either plumbing services or other general services that are needed for just maintenance of the buildings. In addition to that, there is about $1 million that's going specifically towards safety and security. And that's a contract that we have specifically with, I'm trying to remember the name of the vendor offhand, sorry. But that specifically is to maintain safety in the schools. We also have, in addition to that, general construction contracts. The school site Santa Fe High, there is about $9 million in a construction cost that's going specifically to Santa Fe High. To Sweeney, about $5,000. To Milagro, about $17,000. To Capitol High, about $210,000. And to Atalaya, about $87,000. And then lastly to Aspen, about $185,000. And these are specific projects that already have been outlined through the CRC. In addition to that, we have a student nutrition contract of $325,000, specifically for food services. We also have a CES contracts, which compile of ancillary services and additional support for special education, and that is about $3.5 million. And then we also have, through the accountability and assessment team for the Northwest evaluation assessment of $167,000. And then lastly, we have additional contracts related to the information and the strategy office of about $1.4 million in contracts. Most of these are comprised, as I mentioned, of recurring items from either construction projects that are continuing throughout the summer, but in addition to that, renewal of contracts that are needed for services in the upcoming fiscal year. I also have a listing of these by fund as requested. And so through the ETN, we have approximately $1.4 million that is funded, $1.7 million that is funded out of ETN. Through the HB 33 is about $2.8 million. SB 9 is about $6.9 million.
Let me pause you there. Board Member Carrillo.
I mean, I'm curious as to why we're going through all of this, given that we do this every June. And basically, June is a time when we renew all the contracts for everything coming up in the following year. And we have, I mean, I'm not trying to, thank you, Mr. Martinez, for all of this, but I just, I'm wondering why, because it's all in front of us too, the board needs to go through this broken down this way when we do this every June.
Thank you for the question. In my never-ending quest to have this district and its operations be better understood, in adding up the 6 pages of contracts, sometimes we do things for the benefit of the audience and the community rather than simply for the benefit of the board. Anticipating that this might be a question, we have spent a grand total of 4 minutes on this thus far, and I think that some valuable aggregation and clarity has been communicated to the larger public and audience as to this significant amount of our budget that we are approving tonight. So it is in the interest of transparency and better communication about district operations that I asked for a brief overview of this. Mr. Martinez, is there more that you wanted to say? You'd gotten through HB 33 and SB 9, I believe.
Yes, and continuing with that, the operational fund is about 3.6 million. And then lastly, the general obligation bond in the amount of about 9.2 million. And so a large portion of that is comprised through capital funds. I think the majority of that is funded through capital, and then just a smaller portion through operational, the 3.6 million roughly. And so most of these contracts of the 25 million, as I mentioned, are either annual or recurring contracts through maintenance or just general services.
Thank you very much. One question I had, just on our chart, there's close to $9 million, it looks like, for the Santa Fe High School. It says construction of administration building. My question is that correct? Is it really the construction of the administration building, or is it a more comprehensive projects at Santa Fe High?
Superintendent Noble, I'll let the operations answer that question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Good evening, Board President Noble, board members, Superintendent Garcia. The contract for Santa Fe High School with Janes Corporation is for the construction, the rebuild of the administrative services building at Santa Fe High School. So that's been demolished in the last couple of weeks. It is being demolished actually as we speak, and will be completely rebuilt with a reorientation, new ingress and egress. The guard shack is moving, so it's a rather elaborate project, inclusive of utility upgrade and relocation. So this is a part of the facility master plan and working towards the total project budget approved by the Citizens Review Committee.
Thank you very much. The other question I had was about the conduit under the tennis courts. Where's that one? That's all district-wide.
Board President Noble, board members, I have identified where that's at, and I can explain what that work is about.
Please, go ahead.
We learned that we were needing electric power to the parking area because the lights would be out of service during the entire project of the construction of that administration building. So this provides us the ability to be able to take power to the parking lot and also various locations with the tennis courts to ensure that we have power during construction and at a later time with the tennis courts.
And when we installed the tennis courts, was the conduit not good, or?
No, this is just part of the process with the tennis courts to be able to provide power.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much.
So just on that note, Madam President, so why can we not have done temporary power while during construction? And so now this is actually $150,000 that's added to this tennis court project for the admin building during construction? I don't follow you, Mr. Romero, sorry.
Secretary Garcia, board members, superintendent. This additional work was discovered when we were going to have to change the power source where we're supplying power to the main administration building. When we had to take down the main administration building, we had to cut power to that. We did discover that we were going to take out the parking lot lights during that entire project if we didn't provide power to that parking area.
So, Madam, we talked about this a little bit later, but if the contractor actually bid on this and he knew where the power should have come from, the contractor and/or architect should actually be taking this up. Why is the district paid for it? Is the only comment that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just really quick on are we done? I have a question.
Secretary Garcia, yeah.
Another comment is just on item number 5 on the first page, $210,000, $850. How did we actually miss the GRT tax? How did the contractor miss the GRT tax? How did procurement miss the GRT tax? How did they just hopefully next time that doesn't happen, that we actually don't miss the gross receipt tax on a huge, large project, because that's the first thing the contractor should look at and everybody else. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Garcia, Mr. Martinez. I appreciate putting that together. I really do think it is important when we're spending this much, and especially given that we are going to a bond cycle that is different, and that we have very general voters who will be looking at our bonds, that we work to improve transparency around how and what we spend. And this, again, that's a heck of an infusion to Santa Fe's currently booming economy of $25 million that I believe we are going to approve. So with that, I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion for approval of the contracts over $50,000 as listed in the board packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, those contracts have been approved. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to item 9, action items on the back side of our agenda. Well, maybe that's my agenda. I'm not sure how that looks on everybody's. So, action item A, the superintendent contract. Are there any board members who want to make comments or make a motion? Board Member Cashman? Oh, sorry. Tony, are you going to give us updated printed versions?
Madam President?
Yes, Board Member Carrillo.
Before you make the motion for approval, I would like to make a motion to table. And the reason I wanted to make a motion to table is that I don't believe as a board we have all the necessary information to make this decision, and that is essentially this year's proficiency scores from the state that tell us where we are as a district, improving or not. And we were supposed to get, we were told originally we were going to get this information in May, so teachers and principals would actually be able to do something with it. And then we were told June 7th, and now we're told July. And unfortunately, when I called PED, they just really seemed out to sea on the entire issue as to when we're going to get any information. The reason I say a motion to table is, I mean, I would regard making a decision without the information the same as a company retaining a CEO or continuing on a contract without a current profit and loss statement, or a sports team making a motion to continue a general manager without a win-loss record. So I just feel like it'd be advantageous to the board to be able to have that information before we make this decision.
Okay, and I would argue that that is something that is not controlled in any way by the district, and that we need to continue to do business no matter what is happening at PED. And I appreciate this board's willingness to continue to do business and move the district forward. And given that we already have a record of this being pushed out, I think we owe the community and this district the stability of making a decision tonight. But we have a motion. Is there a second for that motion? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. So, now that I have this, I move that the Santa Fe Public School Board of Education offer Dr. Veronica C. Garcia a contract as superintendent from July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2021. That's 2 years for those of you keeping score at home, at an annual contract rate of $100,095,570 as outlined in the contract offer that will be attached to the minutes of this meeting. So that's a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Board Member Carrillo.
Thank you. I would first, Madam President, ask that I'm able to, because I have some notes here, if I'm able to speak uninterrupted.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much. 8 years ago, and then 4 years ago, when I took the oath, I mean, I think a lot of us had Judge Patricio Serna swear us in, the Honorable Judge. And the oath of office was, a lot of it had to do with upholding the Constitution of the state of New Mexico and the Constitution of the country. And it dawned on me over these last weeks, there should also be included in some sort of oath, and I know that all of us feel the same way in terms of we're making an oath to make decisions on behalf of our kids, right? To do whatever is in the best interest of the kids in Santa Fe Public Schools. And that's the place where everything that follows that I'm going to talk about comes from. The students being our constituents and everything else, either feeding that, the goals there, or not. The first, not having the information, as I stated, in trying to table, that I don't know of any organization actually that would ever take steps and to make this kind of a commitment without having information. And I think that's very important for us, because the measure of how our kids are doing is the measure of how our district is doing, and the measure of whether or not we're living up to our responsibilities as a board. And I know that if we look at data from the last 2 years, not including, of course, this year since we don't have it, that for me, the needle has not moved to the extent that I believe it's in the best interest of our students. And while there have been many successes for the district and a lot of different positives for the district, and I believe that even what Ms. Mayer was speaking of relative to the district's relationship with our labor organizations, ultimately, for me, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. How are our kids doing? And we don't have the scores for this last year to show how they're doing. I had an appointment last week at the community college, and because I was very curious about the whole issue of remedial, and this is about how our kids are doing. And while I fully expected the person that I met with to say that maybe 40 to 45% of the kids coming out of Santa Fe Public Schools had to take remedial courses, it was actually 75 to 80% of the kids coming from our 2 high schools have to take remedial courses at the college. We don't have the information at UNM, and I don't have it for NMSU either. But when we think about that only 20% of kids who start college by having to take remedial classes actually graduate college, only 20%, I believe that that's a systemic failure of the district to uphold our oath, if you will, or my oath, to make sure that the kids are being sufficiently educated and prepared for either career or college. And the reason I mentioned career as well is this discussion that I had with a person at the community college, also focused around when kids are not proficient in math and English, this also affects in a great way their ability to secure any kind of a job in the trades. Because they do need to read instruction manuals. They need to be able to write even something as simple as a thank you letter, to be able to write a report on a property that might be being surveyed. And if we're not giving them and we're not providing them the skills that they need to do all of that, I think that that's something that we need to take into account as a district as we move forward on the continuation of a contract. While we did see, I think, a great, in a lot of schools or high schools, some increases in graduation rates, we also know that kids can graduate with a D average. And I know that a fellow board member and I, Ms. Cashman, has been speaking about proficiency rates as being far, far more relative to their success than a graduation rate. And I believe our graduation rates have also increased in a great part to efforts to let kids know that they maybe only have 2 or 3 credits to finish. Please don't give up. But also the increase in athletic participation, because we know that as kids participate in athletics, they have to maintain their grade point average, and they are going to graduate. So that one feeds the other in terms of the success in that area. There were other notes that I had here that I'm told on the advice of counsel that I cannot speak about, and I respect that. And I would just go back to that foundationally, besides keeping our kids safe, right, in school, foundationally, the thing that absolutely positively matters the most in what we do as a district is, are we educating our kids? We have facilities that are unsurpassed in the state. And Maureen and I had the pleasure, actually, if you haven't done it yet, of going to Milagro and looking at the new school. It's mind-blowingly excellent in terms of everything that went into that design and the property and everything that we're doing over there. There are so many successes, and I'm not trying in any way to diminish any of those successes or in any way to disparage any of the work that all of our employees are doing throughout the district. But I have to come back to, how are the kids doing? And while some kids are going off, like Alfredo, who we met, is going off on a full ride to Princeton, okay, from Capitol High School. We have lots of kids that are going to like Middlebury and Yale and also colleges within the state. We have a lot to be incredibly proud of. But on the whole, are we meeting our mandate, if you will, as a board and as a district to educate our kids? And after 2 years not having this third year of information, my answer is no. That there's systemic failure to educate our kids so that they are college ready and career ready. And it's because I feel that we have failed in this area that I cannot, in good conscience or morally, continue on the road we're on with a contract extension.
Any other board members want to comment? Okay, before we vote, I guess I will make a few comments, which is that, again, we, like all the districts throughout the state, don't have these scores. Many districts are moving forward with superintendent contracts, or already have done. They do it in February. I believe this is responsible to our community and to our staff to provide stability as to what is going on. More importantly, as somebody who has spent a lot of time looking at economics, and anybody can tell you that, frankly, this president is benefiting from things that were done by President Obama. The economy is something that tends to lag. And I would argue that district test scores are something that lags. And we have all railed against the fact that test scores were used in teacher evaluations. And I would say there's a lot to look at, and we need to do better on proficiency. But the way that we do that is transformative stuff in the district. I believe that begins primarily with the staff that we are able to retain and develop. We heard very strong words from the president of the Teachers Union earlier tonight about the morale and the feeling of teachers in the district. We have a much decreased turnover in principals this year, and in terms of staff, we actually do have statistically significant growth in English language arts in terms of our test scores. And I believe that stability
is very important, and that this is a massive district with a lot. It's like turning a super tanker, and the gyrating whims of one or another person as to what we need to do to include things, I think, are not responsible. I think what is responsible is to work with the big system that we have and to continue to make measurable and stable progress. And ultimately, I see that we have an exceptional team at the senior level in this district. We have less turnover in all sorts of areas. We had a lot of progress in the collective bargaining agreement, and I am very pleased to support the exceptional performance of this superintendent, and I will be voting to approve this contract as negotiated. And on a personal note, Dr. Garcia, I appreciate your service and all that you bring to this district. We are fortunate to have you and your experience and savvy, particularly at this point in time, and that is something that for me is very important in terms of moving this district forward and keeping things on track to really transform what is an incredibly difficult system, given the way we get funding, given the things that came down in terms of K-5 plus this year, and a lot of districts, as we saw, have not taken advantage of that funding. We have already seen, I believe it's more than $500,000 come into the district because of that, and because we have a superintendent who is smart, knowledgeable, savvy, and steady, and I believe making transformative change in this district. So I will do a roll call vote. The motion is on the approval of the contract from July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2021 at the contract rate of $100,095,570 as outlined in the contract offer that will be attached to the minutes of this meeting. So, Board Member Carrillo.
No.
Board Member Cashman.
Yes.
Board Member Secretary Garcia. Yes. For the record, that was a yes, if not into the microphone. Yes. Vice President Price.
Yes.
And the President votes yes. The contract's been approved. Thank you. Board Member Cashman.
I wanted to save my comments until after we had approved the contract. I'm very appreciative that Dr. Garcia has agreed to stay another year. I think she was instrumental directing her staff to get the ETN passed, because we know a lot of districts failed in those mail-in ballots, and as she saw things going back and forth, she kept on adapting, so we had a successful ETN passage, and that is something that's key for a superintendent to do for a district, so I want to thank you. But what I want to thank you more for is, and I'd like to also thank Board Member Carrillo and Vice President Price for the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit. I'm not sure that lawsuit would have gone forward if Santa Fe Public Schools was not one of the lead plaintiffs in that case. Dr. Boyd was during that time too, but I really think to get the outcome for not only our children, but for the entire state, Dr. Garcia was a valuable expert witness. She did the district proud. And, you know, I mean, Board Member Carrillo knows I share concerns about proficiency, but that's what the lawsuit is about. We need to, there are many things we need to do, and we just don't have the resources to do it. So I'm hoping moving forward we will see those proficiency scores start changing. The other thing I'm proud of is, and it was nice to hear the union president, the positive relationship she has with our district employees. For me, that was very important when I ran for the school board, because that wasn't happening, or at least in my opinion, it wasn't happening. And the other thing, which is another key thing for the board, is budget priorities. And you listen to what the board said. We said, wait a minute, we've got other priorities here that we think, and you went ahead and figured out how to start moving our budget to where it aligns with some of the board priorities. And a lot of that I talk about is the counselors, the nurses, the librarian. We're not there yet, but we're moving forward, and I'm sure that Dr. Garcia and the district will have a more detailed plan for us next year. So I really appreciate you on a personal level, but on a professional level, I appreciate what you've done for our district, and you know, I think we will continue to improve, and so thank you, and I'm glad we voted and approved the contract.
Madam President, just echoing some of the comments that Board Member Cashman said, as well as yourself, Ms. President. The Superintendent actually knows where I stand with her. I definitely understand the proficiency rate in the state of New Mexico as a whole, and hopefully the state of New Mexico as a whole can actually get moving forward. It's almost like building a motor, a car motor, as you start getting all the items that make the motor function get going. It takes a little while for that to happen, but thank you and congratulations.
I'm glad that you decided to make a home with us again. You were great the first time around, and you're even better now. And so thank you so very much for all that you do. And to reiterate the fact that you listen to the board, that's a big one for me.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to say a few words, Dr. Garcia?
Yes, I would like to say a few things. And first of all, thank you, Board President Noble, Vice President Cashman, Secretary Garcia, Board Member Cashman, for your support and belief in me. And we've accomplished a lot of amazing things over this last year, whether it was a balanced budget, to be able to get the kind of budget that you want, the ETN election, where they've gone down in flames across the state, and we passed it with that 6,000 vote margin, to relations with our unions, to be able to work collaboratively and keep the district moving forward, to recruitment and retention efforts, whether it's the National Board Certified Teacher Program, to our partnerships with NEA and with NUSENDA, to our National Board Certification, and now a new one, our Transformational Leadership Initiative. For the first time, we have the lowest turnover rate at, Otero with that program that we piloted in 2 schools. We're moving to 4. The entrepreneurship program that we've put into place at Ortiz, that kids getting national honors. Every week we bring to you national honors being won by our teachers, by our students, that aren't reflected by the PARCC test score. And you have said it yourself, including you, Mr. Carrillo, that our students and our schools are more than a test score. And I do want to say one thing, that the PARCC test is the test that the governor has said we're no longer going to do because it was flawed. And this is the test that I am being judged on. I am perplexed because, Mr. Carrillo, you led a march against the PARCC, against the PARCC. You led kids from Santa Fe High and teachers to the secretary's office. That has left a residue in the district where people don't really believe in the PARCC. So we've kind of been swimming upstream. And so I get it, and I have put many things in place to prove instruction. We have not been sitting on our laurels. And when we bring you the proficiency data, as we did last time, you will see that the growth that we have made over the last couple of years has been statistically significant. You are not going to see 5 and 10% gains on those kinds of assessments that will hold, that people will feel will hold. Now this year, they said it was a new test. It's a transition test. It is still PARCC. It is just a shorter version of it with a different name. And now we don't know how that's going to be weighted. So now we have this sort of interim year. What does that mean? We do have other data that we will bring to you when we share the proficiency data. But there is so much more that we are doing by listening to our community in terms of our strategic plan that we finished, that we are implementing, our Project North Star that became our values, that how we treat each other, what we want from our kids, to the attributes of the graduate that now the state is saying they're going to do a profile of the graduate. That started here. The evaluation of those attributes of the graduate, because what we heard from our community, we want our kids to be able to read and do math, but we also want the soft skills. We also want to know that they know how to look somebody in the eye and shake their hand. We want to know that they can work collaboratively in groups. We want to know that they're good problem solvers. We want to know that they're community minded. Guess what? Santa Fe Public Schools is going to be a leader and is a leader, and I've been asked to speak on this, for a new assessment for the state. And I could go on and on and on, and I don't do this by myself. This is done by teachers in the classroom, by our principals, by our directors, by the leaders here in this room. And so, you know, I have no problem being accountable, but I also want to be treated fairly. And I feel that overall, if I were doing a self-evaluation, I am proud of the work. I have put my heart and soul into this work. I love this community. I love the teachers, the students, the parents. I love my district staff, my team, and I enjoy working with this board very much. At this stage in my life, I'm almost 70. I don't need to work, and I told the board this. I don't do this for the salary. I don't do this work because, oh gosh, what else am I going to do? I love being a superintendent and making a difference in the lives of young people in a public education setting, because I think those of you that know my story know I'm a child of poverty. And my life was dramatically changed, not only for myself, but for my children, my grandchildren, and generations to come, because I had access to a quality public education. And so that does mean kids being able to read and write and do math and do better. And that's what drives me every single day. And I never forget that it's a privilege and a responsibility from the moment I start, and a lot of you know that. I start at 5:30 in the morning with my clips and into the evening. And so people say, why do you work so much? Because it's not a job, it's a vocation. And I take all aspects of it very seriously. So I thank you for your vote of confidence. I will continue to give it my all, and together we're going to do great things and continue to do great things for the children and our families in this community. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item B on the action items under Roman numeral 9, the 2019-2020 Santa Fe Federation of School Employee Collective Bargaining Agreement. We need to take this up at another time. So may I have a motion?
So
Motion to table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, item B has been tabled. Item C, the NEA Santa Fe Collective Bargaining Agreement. We heard earlier from the union president, Grace Mayer. Clearly they have ratified it. And again, I just want to thank everyone on both sides of the negotiating team, to Ms. Mayer and her team on the NEA side, and Ms. Sink and the team on the district side. You've made a lot of progress. I am absolutely thrilled to see some of these minimums come up and know that our minimum wage in the Santa Fe Public Schools is significantly higher even than the living wage in the city of Santa Fe.
Madam President,
Secretary, you're saying?
move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yay. And thank you again. On to item D, the second reading and approval of amended policy 304, student transfer policy.
I move to approve.
Second?
And I would just say at this point, having obviously brought this policy forward and having listened to the discussion when it was first brought forward, this and the comments of Board Member Carrillo, this is not about necessity. This is about doing things differently. We are still basically operating on a model where there were single incomes and a parent at home, and I had a long discussion today with a parent who has some ideas as to how to change things up in terms of rebalancing our district. So I'm sad that we didn't give this a chance to see what happened. I do understand the argument for equity. I do feel that this policy could potentially, and most importantly, it's the thinking about innovation and how we look at our district transfer policy differently, but also that it could potentially do more good for more people, which is often a litmus test for me. Having said that, we'll do a roll call vote on this one, the second reading and approval of amended policy 304, student transfer. Board Member Carrillo?
Is there additional discussion at all? Did anybody?
I
Wasn't asked.
I looked and nobody was raising their hand, but.
The motion was to approve it, so yes.
Board Member Cashman?
Yes.
Secretary Garcia?
No.
Vice President Price?
Yes.
And the President votes no, so the motion does carry on a vote of 3-2. Moving on to action item E, under Roman numeral 9, second reading and approval of resolution 2018-2019-14, anti-underage student vaping. Board Member Carrillo, would you tell us what's changed since the last time?
Items, it's on last page, C, D, and E. Those were added. Ruth, thank you. Go with it? Yeah, thank you very much for your help. That's what's changed.
Could you repeat that, please?
On the last page, so it starts at line 92, items, the be it therefores, C, D, and E. So it's banning the advertising and promotion of e-cigarettes accessible to youths, which essentially, in the same way advertising for liquor or regular cigarettes, having vaping in those devices fall under the same categories as alcohol. And then in terms of allocating funds for school and community, it's having the legislature support schools in our wellness programs on the educational side, and then also owning up to their responsibility on the community side. You know, the same way there was all of us remember when they were telling us how, you know, cigarettes wouldn't hurt us if we were just responsible. And so it's really just making sure that community campaigns happen around this, and then incorporating e-cigarettes in terms of tobacco-free laws. And so, you know, and probably the most stringent part of that is if an adult in a home is allowing a bunch of other teenagers that are not her own to be in the home vaping, it's going to be treated as though she's letting them drink. And so these may sound draconian initially, but I'm sure none of us would want our kids going to a friend's house and having a bunch of beer and Jack Daniels that we don't approve of being served in that house by an adult present. So those are the things that have changed and been added to this. Of course, this is here just in a nutshell because this has become an epidemic, and unfortunately, even at the middle schools, we're seeing kids vape. And I was at watching World Cup last weekend, and I fell out of my chair when I saw two people that I would never thought vape. It's like, what are you, an idiot? I was stunned, and it's just, oh, but it's not nearly as bad. Oh, but it's this. Oh, but it's that. It's like, Oh, man, you just believe in all those ads. Anyway, so I think that this board is taking a very responsible position if we pass this. And then my commitment is as well to continue contacting even more legislators than I already have and school boards to gain support for this in the off season so that the governor will put this on the docket, even though it's a 30-day session, and we can get this rolling beginning of next year.
And to that point, critically, the language is that we are, as the Board of Education in Santa Fe, asking that the New Mexico School Boards Association and other school districts join in urging the 2020 legislature to take actions A through E. Is there a motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
I'll second it with discussion.
Okay, discussion?
I just want to thank Board Member Carrillo for bringing this to the board. I think it is an important issue, and so I do support this, but thank you and staff for helping draft this up. Thank you.
I also want to give a shout out to Senator Udall. He's going to introduce national legislation on vaping.
And we're passing out a little article on that right now. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2018-2019, number 14. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to action item F, a resolution number 15 for 2018-2019. Which is a Growing Our Own Educators initiative. And I actually think it should be growing our own rather than your own. I went back and forth on that. I believe the board heard me speak about this at our previous meeting, and I want to thank Dr. Garcia and Ruth in particular for the help on this. A number of other folks have informed this as well. And ultimately, this creates an umbrella for us to work on growing our own educators and staff out of the Santa Fe Public Schools. It goes in conjunction with the Educators Rising initiative and work that we heard about in the superintendent's announcements. And having done a bunch of research around this myself, a lot of districts are using initiatives like this in order to be more culturally responsive and appropriate, and to have their staff look more like the makeup of their particular districts. So with that, if there's...
Make the motion.
I will move to approve this resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, Board Member Cashman.
Just a couple of questions for clarification. On line number 70, the initiative will address financial barriers like college tuition payment, paying for books, et cetera. What are you trying to get at there?
I wonder if, may I?
Yes, please.
Ms. Williams, should have that been taken out when we had the residency? I think that might be an orphan.
From the residency piece.
An orphan, can't come up with the word, antecedent prefix to what we took out on residency.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a friendly amendment.
So lines 70 and 71 should be struck?
Yes.
Okay. And the other question I have is, overall, what are the cost implications for this? It says NA, but...
Madam President, at this time, I don't see any additional because it would just take the place of another elective in terms of the classes. But some of the other work that we're doing to build this, we can apply for grants if we wanted to do additional things. But right now, as it stands, I don't believe that there would be a cost implication other than teaching an elective course. That's within the district's, high school's budgets. And Ms. Sink, as I understand it, they identified the teachers and the one period that the elective would be taught already within the existing budget for those high schools. Yes.
And another point of clarification, line 64, where it says the program will include candidates beyond students in the district, educational assistants, and retirees. How do we envision that working?
Can you repeat that? Where is it?
It's, it starts at line 64, and it talks about that this program would include candidates. I'm sorry. It's line number 64, and it says the program will include candidates beyond students in the district, so educational assistants, retirees, people that want to do mid-career changes. So what do we envision that we're providing those folks from district resources?
So that was language that I looked at particularly, and ultimately, if we are thinking about growing our own, it will certainly be focused on students, but the idea being that there is an interface with the human resources work as to how we are thinking about lots of ways in, including substitute teaching for retirees. I mean, it's my view that we need everyone, including people that maybe have retired from a position but would consider teaching for 3, 5, 7 years more, and that we just create this space for thinking about how do we include other members of our community in terms of growing our own rather than just students.
So with that said, I'm a little bit concerned about that piece, and the reason why is, just like we said, we're glad that we have raised the professional salaries for our teachers. Teaching is a profession, and so there's training that's involved in that. It's a vocation, it's a profession. So to just say that we're going to take people, you know, I mean, our substitutes, unless we changed, you just need a high school diploma. Yeah, you know, I would be concerned if my child was being taught with somebody with just a high school diploma. And, you know, for any of us that have gone through educational programs, you know, they're strict. You know, I mean, you have a period of teacher training, that you're there with a mentor. So I'm just concerned with that we're broadening this, and what are we getting? I can understand for our students to have some mentorship so they see maybe do we like education, but I'm trying to understand that piece of the resolution.
Well, and part of that is thinking about alternative licensure, which is for people with a college degree, a bachelor's degree, and just making sure that we aren't only thinking about that, again, that we create space for different ages of people deciding that they might want to become teachers. I am in no way thinking that the standards or licensure requirements would be degraded, but that we provide pathways for people at different points in their career who are willing to really make the commitment and pursue the licensure and be teachers. And the other thing I would say, and I understand, I did read this, that item H was, and I'm okay with taking that out, if that was part of the, what was the word?
I think it might have been, I think it was before the residency program.
Yeah. Well, the residency program, there we go. But the thing is, in reading it today, what I was thinking is it is about applying for grants and looking for scholarships and that sort of thing, because
That is true.
the barriers are real for people who are not able to pay for college, and assistance in finding and working, particularly with our higher education institutions. And this is something I didn't even say to you, Dr. Garcia, but I spent some time with the president of Northern over the weekend, who got all fired up about this and said, yes, let's do it. Let's provide scholarships. Let's work on it. Let's get folks into the pathway and create real connectivity between the Santa Fe Public Schools and Northern. And I believe, we have the same sort of will at the Santa Fe Community College and some of our other higher education institutions. So I would actually prefer to leave that in,
Okay.
but if it is the preference of the board, I'm okay with taking that out. Board Member Carrillo.
I'm sorry, I just step out for 1 second. What part are you looking, I have some notes here, but also what part are you looking at cutting?
We've discussed, it's
Page and line?
H on the page 3 of 4, lines 70 and 71.
Why would we cut that out? Addressing financial barriers, because financial barriers keep a lot of kids out of any institution of higher learning. So why would we not
Well, the conversation was,
I'm sorry,
Board Member Cashman asked a question, and Dr. Garcia and Ms. Williams confirmed that that was something that was originally in there as part of a residency program language, which Dr. Garcia and I had agreed actually didn't fit in there. And so then the suggestion was we could take it out, but like I said, I actually would like to keep it in.
So I would,
And I
just
guess
on that, I would agree to keep that in because financial barriers too often keep people out. And then on that subject as well, on this particular line, because when we look at the countries, and I usually never refer to these countries when they're being compared to the United States because they're democratic socialist countries that control their economy and everything else. Finland, Singapore, all the countries in Scandinavia, they support all these things. And I've said before that the teaching profession is the one that makes all other professions possible. And so, our district, and I appreciate the resolution very much, our district elevating this is, again, leading the way in the state so that they don't have 33 people graduating from an ED program. We have a bunch of people graduating from our program that can come here and teach, so.
Board Member Cashman.
I guess I appreciate the resolution, but I really can't support the resolution with starting from line 64 through 71. I don't agree on, and that's why I said, what did it mean by this financial? Because childcare, travel expenses, and it concerns me that if we're doing it for our students, that, and giving them a different alternative career to take a look at, I support that. But when we're talking about adults out in the community, there are resources out there now if they wanted to, get an alternative license. They go to the community college. So I don't know what we're supporting, and I would be hesitant to use district resources, even if it's staff time. I think we're strapped as it is. And to add one more piece onto it, I love the chapters of Educators Rising Educators, or however that program. I think that is right on. It's very targeted to explore a different career. But to be reaching out and having us support adults in the community, I think there are programs that do that. And, we're not doing that for other professions, which are just as valuable. And there are also other professions, like even when we talk about our early college opportunities, electricians, plumbers, welders. Unfortunately, most of those, and that's good for us to do, but we wouldn't be bringing other people from the community into those programs. So right now, if G and H stay in, I probably don't support this resolution, though I appreciate the resolution.
Vice President Price and then Board Member Carrillo.
I hate to be the one to say this, but the district paid for my second bachelor's degree, and the district paid for my master's degree so that I could become a principal, an assistant principal, and then a principal. So there has been precedent. We have done this in the past. And I'm thankful to the district for those extra degrees.
So let me ask you a question, and you were working for the district, Ms. Price, well, got it. So I have a question, money-wise, it's like, well, I think we can still do that, totally. But Superintendent Garcia, can we take money that comes from the SEG? First off, I would say, Maureen, if you look at the wills and change them to mays, the paragraphs read differently, and it can be something that's considered as opposed to we will do this. You know, we're really allowing the district and the superintendent to come up with a plan. So I would ask you to consider changing the wills to mays. But then to Dr. Garcia, are we even allowed to use SEG money or money for people that are, I'm not saying not to, right? Because I want to grow your own too, you know that. Just say that right away. But if people are long out of school, it's like we can't, isn't it like after age 22 or something, they can't even be part of Engage or programs like that?
Madam President, members of the board, I think we're conflating two different things. So the Engage piece and the students who are over 22, that's about them getting a high school diploma. So that's a different issue. In terms of being able to subsidize tuition as part of training, my guess is it would be under professional development. Like when we send people, right? I'm looking at Mon and he's shaking his head, yes. We would have to identify those funds. That is not to mean that we could not apply. There are grants around the country that we could apply for, or that we can apply for grants even from various foundations. With that said, we would have to identify within the budget and how we would have an application process. We just now had a pilot as part of our recruitment and retention to have the National Board certification paid for by the district. They signed a contract that they would work X amount of years unless they had an extenuating circumstance. At the end of the day, could we really hold them? Probably not. But the goodwill that is made and the 99% compliance that you'll get is worth it. So I think it can be done because it is in the same vein as strengthening the skills, not unlike when we send them to workshops or conferences.
So I would say terrific. I would say change the wills to mays, and hopefully that would fly.
Board Member Cashman.
I guess I'm concerned when, first of all, we don't have enough professional training dollars, because there's a lot that we could be doing for our staff. And for Vice President Price's comment, she was a district employee. I'm not reading that these are district employees, and so I can't support that when I think there's, if it's a district employee, that it's one thing to take an EA and help them move along, but to take a retiree, for me, that's something that, even though I like a lot of the rest of the resolution, I just, with those, I just think we're incurring financial costs that the district shouldn't be able to when we have limited resources right now. And there are many programs we'd like to see for our teachers, for our staff, for our kids that we can't afford. And so now to go and broaden it further.
So if I may, I feel strongly that we are facing enough of a teaching crisis that we do need to consider all possible points of entry. But I appreciate the comments of Board Member Cashman, and I am okay with striking G and H. I think I would agree it's somewhat cleaner about focusing on our students, which is the real priority for me, and some of the, how it might work with retirees and even the Grow Your Own bill that provides some small amount of money for EAs to become teachers. That's actually clear, and I trust that our HR will be looking at that no matter what. So I'm perfectly happy to move forward with this if there is a lot less discomfort without G and H in the therefore be it resolved section. Any-
Yeah, then I can support if G and H are struck, I can support this.
Okay. So that is an amended motion, which I made. And is that agreeable with the second? I believe that's you, Board Member Carrillo. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution minus items G and H on page 3 of 4, lines 64 through 71. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to action item G, board member committee representatives. So this is which of us serves on which committee? Whom of us serves on which committee? For the English teacher on the board. Board member Carrillo.
No, I was going to. You clarified it. Thank you.
Okay. You were going to correct my English? Whom serves on which committee? So currently, Secretary Garcia and I serve on the audit committee. I am happy to continue in that stead. Is there anyone else who would like to serve on the audit committee?
Madam President, I'm okay remaining on the audit committee as well.
Okay.
Should we just vote on them
Yeah,
one by one?
sure. We'll vote as we go down. So I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve you guys staying on audit.
Okay. And second?
I'll
I
second it.
All right. Board Member Cashman seconded it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, on the Citizens Review Committee.
I'm currently on the Citizen Review Committee. I listened to my board members last year, and they said, give somebody else a chance to sit on that committee. However, I'm passionate about CRC, so I would like to stay on it, but in fairness, if I have to step down, I will, but I would really like to stay on it until I leave the board in January.
Board Member Carrillo.
I don't want you to step down because institutional knowledge and everything that's gone on in the last 12 years is extremely important on that committee. So I would hope that you remain. I would be willing to go back to that committee. I don't know, did you want to stay on that committee, Ms. Rice?
Yes.
All right. Okay, whatever.
Okay. Any other thoughts on CRC? Does somebody want to make a motion?
I guess I'm gonna, since no one else is gonna say it, is the attendance, my understanding is there's been an attendance problem with our board members at CRC. Is that still the case, or, okay? Then I make a motion. Maureen and Ms. Price, stay on those committees, stay on that committee.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that Board Member Cashman and Vice President Price remain on the CRC. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Partners in Education. I love this board, and it is wonderful to see the process of support, and honestly, I love nudging them to think more broadly about what the foundation can do. I am happy to stay on. Having said that, given my professional commitments for particularly the second half of this year, I would love it if someone else is willing to be the representative to the Partners in Education Board. It's a very nice group of people. You have lunch once a month.
Well, I was gonna suggest that you stay, but now that you've said that, I'd be happy to serve on that board because I served in it for my first 3 years on this board. And they are a nice group of people.
They're lovely. I love it.
Motion for Carrillo to stay on the board,
I will second. Okay.
So I'll be in partners. All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Board Member Carrillo. I will
You'll
write
have to
them a
bring me up
note.
to speed.
I will,
Please.
and I will send them a note because I really have enjoyed that, and I forget their excellence teachers program, but it's really it's
Well, and
great.
what you said about broadening the way they look at how they can really help us is critical.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, NMSBA. Who are our current representatives to NMSBA?
What?
Vice President Price.
I talked to Ms. Price about it. I could talk with Joe Guillen about it at this weekend's law conference, but if nobody wants to, I wouldn't mind sitting on that board.
So I don't understand, wait a minute.
Well, there is executive board, and then there's a board for,
Our region, or?
yeah, well, for, there are the officers, they meet, and then after they meet, this is the day before usually a big conference. Then there's a bigger executive group and we are included. Albuquerque and Santa Fe, we get an extra representation because we're big schools, big school district. And I've done that for a number of years. I have difficulty attending conferences, especially getting handicap rooms and accessibility. And so I'm going to step down from that one.
Can I ask you a question about because one of my biggest concerns, and I've voiced this even at, well, you've heard, I mean, all these 8 years at their meetings, in terms of what you said, President Noel, broadening what we're going to do, for God's sake. I mean, if they could even realize just an iota of the power that they could have in shaping education policy in New Mexico, it'd be staggering. So is there the capability to do that on that board?
Not really. Basically, what we do is we go over the agenda.
Oh, for the December meeting?
for the big meeting. So we go over. So anybody who's an officer goes through that agenda 3 times. So no, we sometimes have discussions, but there's no.
So it's procedural?
Yes.
Do they take us all for a steak dinner at the ranch house?
No.
I mean, what's it called? The
No.
Ranchers Club?
You might get a Coke.
Season tickets to the Isotopes?
And maybe a bottle of water.
Or to the New Mexico United soccer games?
And they freeze you out. It's freezing in those meetings. I had to go out to my car and get my poncho, and for this woman who was sitting next to me, bare-sleeved.
Then I nominate Rudy.
Secretary Garcia has indicated the willingness to serve there. It sounds like there's, okay.
I know, right? Ask him for dinner at
You're
the
still
Ranchers
willing.
Club.
Okay. I move that we nominate Rudy Garcia to the NMSBA board representation.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? He runs warm. He'll be fine. Moving on to action item H, board committee appointments. Board Member Carrillo.
My Margot Shirley, my appointment for audit, wants to continue. Rad Acton, my appointment for Citizens Review, wants to continue. Jody Wheeler, my appointment for Citizens Review Committee, wants to continue.
Thank you. Board Member Cashman.
My appointees will continue: Carl Luff for audit, and John Morrison and Clifford Reese for CRC.
Excellent.
I haven't spoken to mine, so I'm not ready to make my appointments.
And I think in the past, we haven't needed to bring this back but maybe we will as a board follow-up item when we have confirmed. And I can say that my 2 CRC appointees will continue, April Gallegos and Philip Goodwin. And I need to reach out, though I have a high degree of confidence that my audit committee representative will continue to serve. And Board Member Price, any?
My members will continue to serve.
Okay. So we need follow-up from Secretary Garcia on his appointees and confirmation from me on audit.
So we'll need an action item, Madam President?
Yes.
Next time for those 3?
Yes. So, all those in favor of Board Member Carrillo, Board Member Cashman, Vice President Price's appointees, and my two appointees to CRC continuing, I'll make a motion that we approve those for the 2019-2020 school year.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. I don't believe we have a presentation. Board discussion and possible action. Board presentations. Board Member Carrillo.
Can we just save this for the beginning of August?
Yes.
Great.
That'd be a good way to start the year.
And then on, also, and I'll send an email to Alma for the beginning of August. I'd like us to look into a program that I was acquainted with this last week called Stop the Bleed. And it's really a, outstanding. So there's one other thing that was
So
interesting.
is that a moot point now?
It's moot now.
Okay.
It's an incredible program.
Expensive. As a matter of fact, we discussed it at Cabinet today and saw a demonstration. And I think it's Ms. Cashman that had brought it to our attention about Stop the Bleed. And so do you guys remember from Cabinet,
Way to go.
how much was it per unit? Like $140 or something? And so we are looking at, right, what it would cost us to have one at each high school, one at each school, some for field trips and for athletics when they travel, and to
And then the
have those
training would
available.
include kids and
And it comes with an app, and it shows you, it has everything in it to stop a bleed, serious bleed. And but then, for example, the app guides you as a person breathing. Of course, you call 911, but it's amazing, and we'll do a little demo for you at a board meeting, and then figure out how we can get it funded.
terrific. I have a question for you also. And do you guys read your American School Board Journal? Oh my God, there's some like really amazing stuff in that magazine. It's in your box. There was this thing in, not proposing anything, but it sounded like a really cool idea on the nutrition side, and it's about preserving food. What? Boxing and freezing leftovers so that they can be taken home. Is that something that we can, you guys get the American School Board Journal too.
That there are regulations around how that food is disposed of, and we can look into that.
Well, if they're doing it in other districts, so I imagine whatever, and if there needs to be a regulation change, that's something we can look into. But it just seems like a great way. I mean, I like to serve food in the cafeterias sometimes because it's just fun. But oh my God, the amount of stuff that just gets thrown away. And as much as I love the idea of composting, if we could freeze this and then kids could take it home to have dinner.
I love this idea, and I'm a little concerned we're off the agenda, but I would love to see us look into it, so maybe we put it on a board discussion and
For next
possible
time?
action for
Right.
next time. Yeah, because I've seen, there was an article circulating on social media that about this, and I think it's a really interesting thing, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Cool, alrighty.
Okay, advanced planning. We're not here until, well, everything is tentative because we're
Well,
taking
that's
July
why,
off.
equally, I mean, we have the schedule. Why is
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
tentative?
I don't know. Board Member Cashman.
One thing that's not on advanced planning, and I just bring it up to our board members, on Wednesday night, starting at 5:30 over at the NICE Center, the Interfaith Coalition is going to have a program on volunteerism, so you might want to go. And then I would ask the board, and I'm giving you enough notice, but I will not be here on Tuesday, August 20th, so if there's anything, I'll be going back to Massachusetts for a memorial service. So if there's anything that's critical that you're going to need my vote for, I will not be attending by voice or anything. So I would just ask that we could schedule it at a different time.
On that,
Go ahead.
are you leaving, is there a span where you're not going to be here in the 20th? Is it, because I would love, we need to change it to Monday or Wednesday, we could do that. Or you're gone that whole.
I'm actually leaving
All right.
on Sunday, and I won't be back until late Wednesday night.
Got it.
And I know I won't be in a frame of mind to be doing school
understand.
board on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right. We are adjourned until August. Thank you all very much.